And Scott, we are live. How you doing?
Good, good. How you doing, Paul?
Good, good. So today, I know we had little bit of a request in regards to real estate. So we're going to jump right into it today and talk about the BRRRR method and what exactly that is. Scott, would you like to tell everybody what exactly that is?
Yeah, I think a bunch of us were doing this before it had this snappy name, but it stands for buy, rehab, refi, repeat. Maybe a few other R's in there at various times, but basically it's buying a rental home, fixing it up, getting some equity, pulling out that equity with a line of credit or whatever, and using those
Mm-hmm.
additional funds to go get your next one, and you know keeping on going.
Right. So basically, you're leveraging, but obviously we'll talk about that in a little bit. You want to do it the smart way and not completely over leverage to risk mitigate, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched a lot of these YouTube videos about the Burr method, and none of them seem to mention that anything ever goes wrong. And it's just good to keep in mind that when you're fixing up a home, you've created the equity. That's great. When you pull out additional funds, you are creating some additional impact on your overall finances. Your cash flow decreases. The next time you go for a loan, your expenses will have increased. So it's just good to keep the whole picture in mind when you're doing that. It's a great idea. It's a great method. If you abuse it or you overdo it, you could stress your financial situation a little bit there.
Right. So the main thing is looking at the total picture of the tactic and the strategy, and not just the good parts about it, but also the parts that you would have to or you'd want to watch out for in case you were just trying to avoid getting yourself into trouble. And we've seen that happen quite a bit in regards to over leveraging. So everything's great until it's not. So let's just take from.
Especially,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, the markets are very up right now. I mean,
Right.
15% this year in the midst of everything going on, which is quite remarkable. And we definitely don't know exactly what's going to happen in the next 1 or 2 or 3 years. So it makes sense to be, to be able to utilize these kind of methods, but also to be kind of safe about it and lower your risk level. Yeah.
Right. And when you say like the markets are up, you're actually are you talking about the Seattle real estate market?
Well, my understanding is, I mean, as a nation, we're up I don't know, somewhere around 12 to 15%. It's certainly in the tech areas where the tech workers are still at their same jobs with really good
Hmm.
salaries,
Hmm.
and they want bigger homes to live in. They're quite desperate for them, actually, because they had like 3 kids in school, and now all those kids are at home, and one or both of them was going to work, and now they're at home, and they've been stuck at home for a year. So they they're crazy out there, getting bigger homes in Seattle, and from what I hear, in a lot of the other major regions as well. But
Right.
homes overall are up. I mean, the stock market's up too, even though it's a little rocky today. There's been a lot of stimulus money out there, and
Hmm.
that's certainly impacted things. But when is the stimulus ever going to stop? Probably it will one day, and what will happen then, right? So
Right. Right. Well, and couple with that though, you never really know. Like, say, take the crash of 2000, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I mean, it kind of went on for a while, right? But
yeah, it took a couple of years.
if if you were in that era in Seattle, you saw the prices decline, maybe not like you did all around the country in the hottest investor spots like Las Vegas or Phoenix or Utah or some of these other places that had a decent amount of investors coming in. But you did see a 20-30% drop. And if you were over leveraged at that point, you were in trouble because you would really have to be making a decent amount of money or cash flowing a decent amount to survive that storm. So now it's interesting to me, especially in the pocket of Seattle, that the it's up. I mean, after the pandemic and everything, that it is still going up, and it's up 15-20%. I know a lot of pockets are like Austin is completely like, I don't even know what percentage they're up there, but it is it's blowing up. A lot of people moving to Austin, and Seattle just seems to be one of those pockets too. And I mean, Amazon, I guess, is growing like crazy, so there's that.
Every home here that's turnkey, that's in a tech worker friendly area, is getting multiple offers, and it's going for, I mean, quite often 10% over the offer price. I've never
Wow.
seen it this extreme. I mean, I've seen hot markets, but this is pretty much exceeding the hot markets I've seen before.
Right, right. And in contrast, you see stuff like that in New York City here too.
Mm-hmm.
But in Manhattan, it's actually surprisingly a little bit softer because a lot of people are moving out of Manhattan or can't afford Manhattan, and they're moving to Brooklyn, Queens, and also out of the state. I know a number of people that personally that have moved completely out of the state. So it's there's these little pockets of, wow, this is up 15-20%, and then Austin's up X percent, and and many other these cities are up 15-20%, and then you have this pocket of, say, New York City, which is down unexpectedly more so than, say, even the crash of 2007, 8, 9. Over here wasn't that bad. So it's an interesting dilemma. I think over here it's less about the banks and more about the fact that people had to leave the state for a variety of different reasons, or they had to leave the city for a variety of different reasons going into the boroughs.
There's been a lot of shifting. I just met a couple who were moving from a beautiful home in Seattle to Idaho. Mm-hmm. There's been a movement, towards the east, people who want to get away from the city, but at the same time, we've had inflows, as we often do, from California, from San Francisco and Los Angeles, from people who see this as moving to a more rural area, basically. So
they look at Seattle, you're saying, and they're thinking that it's a bit more rural than the
cheaper
LA
home
life.
prices, less crowded, basically,
slower,
get a larger home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. On the Idaho side, are they moving where? Or like, say, Coeur d'Alene?
I didn't ask these guys exactly where they were going, but that would be is a straight shot from here over Coeur d'Alene. Yeah. Got
it. So you did say that from a Seattle perspective, things are so expensive inside the city there that a lot of people are moving like a 30, 40, 45 minute drive.
Yeah,
right?
Even people with good jobs, if it's their first home, it's quite a challenge because we're, right here in the core area, we are like at around 1.2 million is probably like an average price. So if you go 30, 35 minutes out, you can get down to 600, 700. And that's for a really nice, large home for a family, maybe even a new home. So there's a lot more flexibility, obviously, with the way most people are working now. So they are moving out, sometimes even further than that.
Got it. Okay. And what about the downtown area in Seattle? I know like the core is like really popular, but in the downtown area, is it pretty similar? Or
no, I'd say there's softness in the actual downtown market, similar to New York City. Probably not quite as extreme, but it's clearly less desirable. People moving out to the suburbs and people moving from the suburbs out to the suburbs of the suburbs.
That's really interesting because 8, 9, 10 years ago, people were trying to move from. They would move out to the suburbs for various different reasons, but the apple of everyone's eye seemed to be like Manhattan, downtown Seattle, like right outside of downtown Seattle, and I'm sure they're still popular, like Queen Anne and stuff, but like it just seems like there was a little bit of a shift away from the inside of the downtown portion of these cities.
Yeah, for sure. My brother was living in Portland, and he sold his home and he moved to a kind of collective farm 30 minutes outside of Portland. And that sounds kind of radical, but I think what some people are feeling is, they were in the city for the social aspect. And when the social aspect went away, and maybe it's not, fully coming back as soon as we'd like, they're trying to create that social environment wherever they can. And sometimes it's moving out to a place where there's more space and they can organize their own activities with their families or a close group of friends or whatever.
Right. Well, that makes a ton of sense, because what I've seen here in New York since, the lockdowns and that sort of thing is a decrease in all that, obviously. And what you're finding is you have the same prices and the same cost of living, relatively speaking, in New York City, but you don't have the benefits as you did before.
Right.
There's still the hustle and bustle, but it's a lot quieter on these streets out here. And, they just opened up indoor dining at 30% capacity again. And so there's aspects of it that were great, because you can go anywhere. You can get a cocktail anywhere, these rooftop decks, there's a lot of different aspects of the city. You can go to shows, all that. And now that that's not here, now you're just living in a still really cool city, but expensive without some of the benefits that people are drawn here for.
Right. I have a friend who moved recently to upstate New York, and as you know, the real estate market's been going crazy out there. I think the question here also from an investment perspective is, these new areas that are opening up, that are getting growth outside of the core areas, is that a trend that's going to sustain? It looks like there are many forces at work that may sustain that, because we have a lot of these companies saying, you can work remotely forever. You can work remotely for as long as you want. Yeah. I personally wouldn't want to be too far away from my work. If I needed to go in, say, once or twice a week, or every day for a while. But it looks like they are indicating that they're giving their employees a lot more flexibility. So, if you're an hour out from a core area, maybe that wasn't that acceptable 2 years ago, but maybe those areas, may continue to grow, and they could be good investment areas.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because just thinking of a few people in particular that moved away from Brooklyn because they thought it was getting a bit more dangerous with all the the looting and the protests and stuff like that over here. And he took his wife and another newborn baby, and he just moved. He can kind of work wherever, so they just moved over to Connecticut. But in regards to is it sustainable? I don't know if that particular move, like in that case, he will stay there. It's just he felt it was safer over there and less of a hassle. But I'm not sure that that's like, okay, this is the long-term thing I'm going to do for 20, 30 years.
Sure. And during the last crash, the 2008 crash in the real estate market, I did notice that the further out areas crashed earlier and harder. Right. There was a flight to what was perceived as the best quality, which tended to be the core areas. But maybe that's shifting somewhat.
Yeah, they might. It might be that is in motion, where they leave for a certain period of time and then maybe come back. Because now that people are working more and more remotely, and it's a little bit more acceptable.
Yeah, it's really accelerated the remote work trend.
Yeah, and you just don't really know, like, the trends of where people are living. Like, people don't want to get up and move every 2 seconds, right? But at the same time, if they can work from wherever, and they say move to Connecticut just because they want to kind of get away from New York for a little bit, and then everything kind of subsides, would they think, oh, okay, now I'm really going to settle down in this next place, or this this next place can be where I'm moving. This was just like a temporary, okay, I can work remotely and live over here for a while.
I have to say, I've got my friend in upstate New York. He's about an hour and a half outside of the city, so pretty far out. But he has actually been looking to buy rental units around where he's living now, and he found a duplex for like $50,000.
That's great.
So I'm just throwing that out there because you can find these crazy deals sometimes if you're a little bit outside the norm. If you're a little bit outside the areas where people think to usually look. And again, that brings up some issues around cash flow versus appreciation. Those are always kind of different things you're looking at. And
right.
Yeah.
Now, how do you view, in my mind, when I look at the cash flow is much more important than the appreciation, especially when it comes to single family. In my mind, how I look at it, and I'd like to get your view on this too, is when I look at single family homes, I didn't look at this, I didn't look at it this way in the past. I looked at it as, okay, appreciation is a given. Like, you're going to get this and it's going to be yours type of thing, right? Where I wasn't as concerned about cash flow, but with the crash of 2008, 9, 10, in that whole thing, I quickly realized, I think we both did, that cash flow is king. And if
it gives you real staying power. Yeah.
So if it's a risk mitigator for if things do go wrong, and I tend to view now appreciation as like a bonus. So it's not something that I completely count on, especially when I'm analyzing a deal. But it is a bonus, and it's a lot of times it's probable if you're doing things right. It's probable, but it's not something that you want to get into an okay deal and then hope that things just go your way in the future from an appreciation standpoint.
I think it's good to balance both of them if you can. Of course, a lot of this has to do with where you're planning to invest. Some of us have the luxury to just go anywhere we want and invest. A lot of us are going to invest in our own backyard, and that our neighborhood will have certain appreciation trends that we should be aware of.
Okay, so Scott, you were saying that when you look at these things, you look at cash flow and appreciation. You kind of look at them both at the same time when analyzing a deal.
Similar to you, I was just looking at appreciation before, because when you're making 10% a year, those numbers really add up, especially once you have a few properties.
Right.
But if you want to be resilient, if you want to be able to make it through the ups and downs, you really do need to look at cash flow. And if you've got the cash flow taken care of, you can hold the properties pretty much forever. So I think you try to get both if you can. You try to find a good balance.
Got it. No, well, that does make sense. Now, when you're looking for deals, there's you mentioned before the turnkey type properties that a lot of people just want to get in. They want a great property. They're paying over like a 10% premium, and then everything's already done. From the aspect of deals and the type of deals that you used to look for, give us an idea of what you would look for, and we'll talk about location in a second, but just the type of deals you would look for if you were going to buy something like, a single family residence or a duplex or fourplex or.
I think it's good to stay right outside those boundaries where people are paying the huge premiums. So what are people paying the huge premiums for? The turnkey houses in the exact neighborhoods that are the hottest neighborhoods, right? So go just outside those hottest neighborhoods. Go just outside that threshold of being a turnkey property. You want a property that someone was in a rush, they got relocated, they just had to move, their company selling the home, or for whatever reason, someone didn't keep up their home and they didn't want to fool with it, and they just wanted to sell it without fixing it up at all. You want those kind of deals where you can walk in and not have the multiple bidders, maybe it's sat on the market for 2 or 3 weeks and they're willing to come down off their offer price now. Maybe you're 5 minutes outside the super hot neighborhood, but it looks like in a couple years that hot neighborhood will expand into your area. That, to me, that's kind of an ideal situation.
Right. So you're looking at, it's similar to what I used to do too, is I would look for not the deals in the hot, where everyone wanted their property, but I would look outside of that. And I would look for the trend of what was happening in the city and where people wanted to live. So like you're saying, like where people were actually moving to, not, okay, you're 5 minutes out of the city, but in an undesirable location and, that sort of thing. I would look, okay, the city's moving in this direction. Let's go look for properties in the path of the growth, but not like the path of the growth to where 10 years down the road, you're good. The path of growth to where, 1 to 3 years, you're seeing.
Yeah, people are just starting to discover your area, or you can just clearly see, hey, why is no one looking over here? This is just 1 or 2 minutes away, but, the real estate agents all like it over there for some reason, but they haven't discovered this little neighborhood. It looks fine. There's a park here. It's like still a good school district. It's still close to the freeway or whatever. Yeah.
Would you look at stuff that you could fix quickly? Like, let's just say, at most a kitchen, but let's just say like kitchen, bathroom, paint, floors, not necessarily floors, but like, something that had carpet that you refinish the hardwoods. Like, would you look for aesthetically appealing things that you could do that have not been done yet?
The best thing would be if they just painted a really ugly color of paint, and you just need a better color, right? I mean, it's all relative. If it's a newer home, so the main systems are kind of intact, of course that's going to be easier. The more superficial the changes, the better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, without totally like gutting a place, but I always used to get excited when I looked at deals and I saw that they were in the path of demand, but they had really outdated, simple things that you could do to improve.
Yeah, the other thing is, I think it's worth, even for someone just starting out, I think it's worth looking at 2 to 4 units. And a lot of people don't think about that. They think, well, a single family home is simpler. That's what I know. I'll just start with that. It'll be easier. But, when it comes time to get rent checks and to pay the mortgage, if you're getting 2 rent checks or 3, or, if you're living there, maybe you're living there and you're getting one in addition to, making your own payment to the mortgage, basically your cash flow situation is usually a whole lot better if you have 2 to 4 units.
Yeah.
And it's the same loan deal too. You get a really good loan still, just like you would with a single family. It's all conventional. It all goes under the category of conventional financing. It's pretty much got the same rules and regulations as you know.
Yes. So, 1 to 4 units for everyone out there. I used to be a mortgage brokerage. I used to own a mortgage brokerage a bit ago, and 1 to 4 units is actually the sweet spot that it could still be primary residence. So you get approved for your primary residence and you live in one and then you rent out the other 3, then you get the best interest rates, but you're also having people essentially help to pay off your mortgage.
The other thing about this, when we're talking about, in terms of the BRRRR method, just breaking it down, I think we're talking about the part where you have to find the property that you're going to purchase and, figure out what you're going to need to do to fix it up. And that part is so important, doing that research, not getting caught up in the hype of, or the emotions of any particular property, like really being kind of dispassionate about it. If you don't get one, just wait. Something else will turn up. Being okay with making a bunch of offers, and knowing that the majority of them will it will not end up in a buy. But you're holding out for not only a good deal in terms of the characteristics of the property, but a really good price, a situation where you've got a motivated seller and you can come to a price that really works for you from an investment perspective as well.
Right, right. So really, when you're looking at these things, look at it, try to take the emotion out of it, and also just be patient.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if it takes you 6 months, but you make another $30,000 or $40,000, you just made that money for basically just being patient.
Yeah. And Scott, you and I both know that it's better to be super patient, because especially when it comes to real estate, because it's a slow moving asset, getting into it and getting out of it. And it's better to be patient and buy it right than to rush things and then be stuck with some type of headache that you need to solve over a period of months or years.
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what about real estate? Like, as real estate, obviously you and I both know this, as an asset class, it is a really good play long term. And especially during this era of, printing money, like we talked about the BRRRR method, but that's kind of like it's kind of like the sound of what the money printers are doing right now.
Right.
But if you look at the money being printed and the potential devaluation of the dollar, what are your thoughts on real estate as an asset class in regards to I guess a hedge against the money printing aspect?
I mean, I think that's one of the main benefits is being a hedge against inflation, for sure. With leverage, right? Because you're typically just putting 10 or 20% down. You're buying an item of real value. And if the dollar depreciates, your property is going to tend to go up. So
right. Yeah.
It's definitely one of the main benefits, especially in this current environment.
And just from a tax perspective, and this is just how I look at things. I'm no tax specialist. This is not tax or financial advice or whatever the disclaimer would be. But over a 15-year period of time, the tax advantages for an investment property are significant. And especially if you live in, say, let's just take the fourplex example. And you live in one of the 4 units in the fourplex, and it's your primary residence. You get the interest rate of primary residence, and you live there for 2 years. Then you can essentially go from normal capital gains tax to deferring the capital gains.
I've known quite a few people who that was their thing. Every 2 years they were buying a home and selling the previous one. And in a rising market, you can certainly do that. Some people might want to hold them more long term, but
right.
You get super good capital gains exclusion basically.
Yes, and then you can roll it into the next property. So now your purchasing power is more. You don't have a taxable event. You don't have an income tax event. It just makes sense from a rollover perspective.
The other interesting thing about choosing the best investment is this is an asset class that is very difficult for the professionals to completely dominate. I mean, they are certainly out there. There are hedge funds now, as you know, that have millions of rental homes, and that's what they do. They've become landlords, but they don't really tend to be the most effective at it because the nature of the market is so local. So that really gives the advantage to the little guy.
With this, we're talking about like specifically single family home residences, right? Or
1 to 4 units.
1 to 4 units.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But in terms of understanding how the neighborhoods really are at the ground level, the livability of them, the walkability, the how the schools are, how the other amenities of the area are. The people living there are going to know it best, basically.
Yeah, and if you're looking at being very patient and getting a really good deal on things, then you're better to be local because you know all about the the areas, the education system, where things
The
are
big
trending,
guys
where
are
things are trending.
they're all about processes and setting up systems and deploying $10 billion as quickly as they can. But if you're just getting a couple of properties and you take your time and you really learn your neighborhood, you can basically be the expert of your local market.
So what would you say? Let's go back to the BRRRR method. So let's just say you buy a fourplex and you live in it and you have a good interest rate on it. It's your primary residence. You have 3 other units paying you rent, so they're paying down your mortgage, and you get into it and there is a situation where it's not so good paint, and you can do some easy upgrades to the outside and the inside in order to basically get it reappraised for a little bit higher. Like walk me through the process of what you would do if you were looking at something like that in regards to timeframes. Like, for instance, would you buy it, renovate it, do the small little aesthetic things, and then 2-3 months later try to refinance it with more equity in it potentially?
There's one consideration, I think, is if you're going to go for owner-occupied loans, you need to live in the property for at least a year. Yeah. So that, if given that that's the situation for a lot of people, if a year is a pretty good amount of time, when you buy the home, you're probably going to want to fix it up some before you move anyone in there, or before you move in anyone into the empty parts of it anyway, empty units. But then you've still got some time to fix it up as you go along. And, a year, it gives you a good amount of time to add value, whether it's through, fixing up and increasing the rents. Maybe the market appreciates during the year. There's a lot of different ways that the value can increase. But, clearly if you're fixing things up, you've got the before after pictures. You can look at comps of other properties. Hey, we started here. Now we're more like this one that's valued, at 50K higher, 80K higher, whatever it is. The market's gone up 12% and we fixed it up. So, by the 12-month mark, you should be thinking, about all the different ways you can show that you've added value and you can really add that value.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and then certainly at that point, you can go and apply for a loan to take out some of that equity and leverage that on the next property.
Right. So, I guess it would depend on how much you could force the appreciation with potentially increasing the rents, or force the appreciation in regards to the value of you aesthetically improving the property. But what would be a target? Like, let's just say you're putting 30% down from the initial purchase. Would you try to force the appreciation to a certain level and then try to get your down payment that you did put in it previously back out? Or how would you handle that?
That's a really good point. I mean, if one way of looking at this is you could get your down payment back, and then you could simply reuse it on the next property, or you could potentially get more than that. But when you do take out the money, you just want to be really careful. That's your war chest, right?
Right.
And it will also, the monthly expense on that new loan will then, be reviewed by the underwriter on all of your next loans as well. So
right.
You've only got so many bullets in the gun. You want to be really careful how you use those funds. Right,
because on one hand, you don't want to, be stress testing the property from a over leveraged standpoint. And the second thing is, the lenders look at these things now as your global debt to income exposure. So they don't look at these things from just like, oh, you have one property and this is the one property. If you're buying a new investment property, they're going to look at the total portfolio, and they're going to look at the debt to income ratio on that. So it makes sense to not stress the first asset as much as you can, not stress it, just depending on the appreciation, the cash flow, and what your goals are with your portfolio.
Yeah.
but then also to, be in a situation where you're okay for the next round of investments that you're looking at.
And the third
from a
and the
banking
fourth
perspective.
One. Yeah. I mean, you should really think about where you want to go with this, even out 5 years, 8 years, whatever. You want to keep your whole financial picture appearing very sound and stable and positive to the underwriters who will review your loan applications for any future properties you're interested to purchase.
Right. So it isn't just it's kind of like, I've never been a great pool player, but I've seen great pool players play, and it's always like they're looking at the next shot, and not even the next shot, but shot.
Right. Yeah.
3,
they're really
4.
thinking ahead.
Yeah. They're looking at shot 3, 4, and 5.
Chess players as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's never about the chess players, right? So it's never about that first shot or that first move.
Mm-hmm,
it's about move 2, 3, and especially once you get really good, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's something that people are neglecting to think about when they're talking about the BRRRR method these days.
Right.
It's more like kind of a YOLO thing, like, go get a property, fix it up, pull out the money as fast as you can. All right, get another one, get another one, get another one. And, you eventually hit a wall if you do that. You might as well be aware of that up front and try to mitigate that as much as possible and, smooth things out and have more sustainability.
Especially looking at the unforeseens, right? Like your city's doing really well, but it's not like New York's that crazy. But if you really go guns blazing, you over leverage everything to the hilt, and credit is flowing, and then you have 10 properties. If you get in a scenario where the unforeseen, like a pandemic happens, or a big real estate bubble, or anything like that, you don't want to be in a position where you're stressed out about 10 assets. You'd rather be like, okay, I have a really good portfolio of 5 to 6 assets, and they're really
That's
solid.
A really good point.
And I can sleep at night, and my family can sleep at night.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As it's a pretty big deal.
It's a long game. It's a long game.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't move. It doesn't move quick. It's not like a stock, right? You can't just trade in and out of it. You have to. It takes time to, make offers on the properties, get the property, get the financing on the property, close on the property, fix up the property, position it for a sale, sell the property. Then you have to go through the same thing on the other side by selling the property, and then 1031 exchange if you're going to roll it into another property to circumvent like the capital gains in the right way. You're essentially you don't have to pay capital gains if it's your primary residence, let's say. So it's, in a way, it's nice because it's a slow game and it's a long-term game. And sometimes on the flip side, it's not as nice because it's a slow and long-term game. and it really depends on, how you look at it depends on how you get into these deals and how you manage the deals and how you not over leverage the deals, but still use powerful methods like the BRRRR method.
Yeah, it just makes sense to, really put thought into each step, especially the, finding the property to buy, looking at the numbers, getting the right price, understanding the area, being the local expert. Even when it comes to contractors, also, you don't necessarily want to pay retail, for the, most expensive contractor out there. You want to shop around there too. You want to find a competent person who is going to cost you less, can get the job done. You want to be careful each step of the way.
Right. And even when you're looking at these, when you're looking at the contractors, like first of all, you can negotiate. So just remember that. But if you are looking at like the most expensive contractor and then the least expensive contractor, in both directions, it could potentially be dangerous. In one direction, the prices are way overinflated, and they're just either they're trying to make more profit, or they don't think you're going to negotiate, or they're going to pay like a lot more overhead within their company. On the flip side, it may be a bid that comes in that is more, the person's new, they don't know what they're doing, they're trying to win the bid, they're fly by night, it could really mess up. So sometimes the cheapest isn't necessarily the cheapest. It could be
that's a good point.
It could be the most expensive. Like the cheapest many times is the most expensive. So what you're really doing is you are a professional, intuitive risk mitigator. So that's in the buy, that's in the what you're paying for from a contracting perspective, that's in rehabbing it, that's in selling it, that's in looking for the next property. You're always looking to protect the downside.
That's so critical. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how you minimize your risk. That's how you have a lot less chance of having problems, of having things blow up.
Yeah. And this time is so interesting because the deals, like it's so interesting because in New York City a year ago, you would have been dying to have and own and, be 80, 70, 60, 80% leveraged in commercial real estate. Right?
Yeah.
And now it is a nightmare for commercial real estate, for commercial real estate deals inside the city even. So, we can really get into these asset categories later, but that's an interesting play to me because going back to risk mitigation, everyone saw 2007, 8 after. Like the people who were never doing any deals ever, who were scared to do anything, they're the ones who always knew that it was going to happen after it happened. Right? And then, but here too, like 2007, 8, no one saw that like completely coming. Like you might say, okay, I can, go down 10, 20%, but you wouldn't have thought like 50, 60% on any real estate.
It was pretty radical. Yeah.
It was completely radical. And you're seeing that same thing that no one could have predicted, like the pandemic in New York City now. The whole commercial industry shook, from commercial realtors who I'm sure were making a killing before, from the property owners who are making a killing, to the banks that were making a killing, to the contractors doing electrical work that were making a killing. Like all across the board, that was kind of wiped out. And now in New York City, you have in this asset class, I couldn't say, oh, that's going to be a great, asset now. You may be buying it at a deep value, but how deep? Like how deep is this going to affect people working remote, maybe not going back into these commercial spaces? I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it's going to play out.
And I think this is a topic we can certainly explore in other podcasts. Basically, is there going to be a crash? I mean, there already has been, obviously, to an extent in commercial real estate, but a lot of there's been so much stimulus, so much forbearance, so many deals worked out that, I'm not sure there's been that many deeply discounted properties that have really hit the market yet, because there's this kind of illusion that everything's fine in a certain way.
Sure.
So I think the thing is, what's going to happen in a year? What's going to happen a year from now, when this most recent 1.9 trillion stimulus is mostly spent? Is it just going to be continuous stimulus for the foreseeable future, or is it going to end at some point? And what will happen when that happens? Will we see? You can't even foreclose on a residential property right now that has a government-backed mortgage, which is most of them. That deadline was just extended out again, I think, until the end of June. So come July, we'll have had 18 months when you could not legally foreclose on most any real, 1-4 unit home. What's going to happen when that deadline stops being extended? Well, that will be a buying opportunity, by the way, that you might just want to wait for. It might be a good buying opportunity.
Sure. And it could be across asset classes. So
yeah. I mean, same with
for sure. I mean, there's going to be opportunities in commercial.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, there's going to be opportunities in commercial. Yeah, so we're gonna. I know that it's too much for one podcast, but we're going to have to dig into these things individually and take everybody through our thoughts, our perceptions, and some of the deals that we're. Yeah, with some of the deals that we're looking at and excited about in the future. So even though everything seems a little bit crazy right now, in the chaos is opportunity. So that's what I look forward to in the future. And yeah, so look forward to the next chats we have, Scott, in regards to real estate and the things that are happening in and amongst our cities.
Yep, this has been great. I think we explored some really interesting topics, and some gems in there somewhere, I think.
Okay, so for everybody out there, remember the BRRRR method, but remember to use the BRRRR method smart and do your due diligence and risk mitigate in as many ways possible. Use it responsibly, but it is a great method. And with that, Scott, I will see you on the next episode.
Okay, see you next time.